Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. Today's show is one of a two-part show titled The Sheriff Face-Off, in which we're focusing on the race for Hillsborough County Sheriff. And my guest right now is Bill Barry, who is the Democratic nominee for the job. Now, Bill's a newcomer to the political scene as such, but is no newcomer to law and order, having spent a career in law enforcement as both a police officer and as a longtime member of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department. Among the many honors he has received, he also gained national recognition at a congressional breakfast for his work in the recovery of a child abducted by someone on a most wanted list. Scary stuff. I'm not now going to use the limited valuable time that we have to go back and again describe his biography and accomplishments, since you can see and hear all that by watching the previous show that we did together, and I do urge you to do so. It is on the BCTV website, www.bedfordtv.com. You would simply go to channel 16, click on the video on demand, in the search box put Tell It Like It Is, and the list will show that show named Race for Sheriff with Bill Barry. But even easier than that, if you want to avoid all that, paging and number and pushing and everything, send me an email. It'll be on screen, and I will send you a direct link to the show. How's that? I am so glad to see you again. Last time I saw you was kind of the beginning of your campaign, and now you're kind of like a seasoned candidate. How's it going?
It's going well, and I thank you again, Kathy. You were very kind to me the first time, and thank you for the invitation, and Bedford Community Television for inviting me back.
I imagine you've been busy going here, there, everywhere, events, speeches, the whole nine yards, huh?
Yeah, I was told when I first got into this race that it's very busy. There's a lot of towns to cover. You got Manchester and Nashua.
Yes.
And I've been out to just about all of them. There's a few left that I have to visit, but it's been a lot of fun.
I see your signs popping up all over the place too, so I know your worker bees are working.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they're working very hard.
That's important.
Yeah.
Well, today let's kind of focus in more on your ideas rather than the first interview. As you know, kind of candidates got the same type of questions. But now, you're in a new race. So one of the things that I do remember from talking to you that first time is that finding missing children is really something near and dear to your heart, your personal heart. Tell us about your work on that, and kind of then extend on to tell us what you would do as sheriff if elected to further protect children.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a passion for me I've worked on quite a few missing children cases. I've been actually contacted throughout the nation to work on cases. They weren't just New Hampshire cases, and I've been very successful. I've been successful because I'm a hard worker. Again, I have passion for children. It's so important that we work together in law enforcement in the community to make sure that our children are safe and protected. I have a great working relationship with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I was actually an advocate for them where I would visit schools and talk on their behalf and hand out literature to make sure that our children are safe and protected.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard that there have been some really significant cuts to the CHINS program, which of course is the Children in Need of Services program. Some viewers of the show might be unfamiliar with CHINS, so maybe you could talk a little bit about what it is, what they do, and talk about how the program has been cut. And maybe also, could you tell me, is that funded through county funds, state funds, what?
It's actually funded through the state, and what it is, it's CHINS is Children in Need of Services. And what was happening is throughout the years, they would annually take care of 1,000 children per year. And what they would do is these kids are in need of services where they need counseling. Their children aren't showing up to school. They're getting trouble at home. They're getting in trouble out in the community. It was back when they had the funding, it was easier for law enforcement to be able to place the children in the CHINS program so that they would get the necessary services. And it's so important. It's so important for these kids to get these services because it does. It keeps them out of the court system. It keeps them out of YDC, and in the long run, that actually saves the county, the state taxpayers, a lot of money. There were, from what I understand, it was about approximately $7 million that was cut.
That much?
Yeah, and that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of services. Now, again, keep in mind that there were 1,000 children annually that were being serviced. Now it's down to 40 to 50 per year.
Wow.
And it doesn't stop there. And these children that are getting the services they needed, part of the requirement is they either have to have a mental illness or they have to be a danger to themselves or to the community. So
wow.
It's cut down drastically. And law enforcement agencies throughout the county and actually throughout the state were pretty upset. And the unfortunate thing, and this is where my opponent comes in, he had the opportunity to speak out in opposition to the cuts, and he didn't. The sheriff is the highest law enforcement agent in the county, and it's his responsibility to lead. And he should have been there front and center to oppose these cuts. I know Nashua PD was there, Manchester PD, and quite a few other police chiefs that spoke out in opposition, because it's very, very important that we work with these kids and keep them out of the court system.
Now, let me ask you something. Have a lot of these kids now, without that program, actually wound up in custody?
I'm not sure right now if they have, because this is all new.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know is what you're doing is, especially kids that don't go to school, what are they going to do all day? Then they're going to sleep, number one. Mm-hmm. They're going to probably play video games, but then when they get bored with that, they're going to go out in the community and going to start burglarizing homes, and that's what we want to avoid.
Yeah, they're going to be out getting in trouble. Yeah,
exactly.
And I mean, some of it's not necessarily anything other than being a stupid kid.
Exactly.
For all intents and purposes.
And you know what? And it's not, some of them you can blame it on the parents, but there are a lot of parents that have worked really, really hard to keep their children out of trouble, really, really hard to make sure that they show up in school, and they just can't make it. I'm on the board of directors over at the Webster House. I was the former president at the Webster House, and we deal with kids that are troubled, and I see it firsthand. I've volunteered my time in the community for over 30 years dealing with kids. And it means a lot to me. It means a lot to me to keep these kids out of YDC, because that's a stepping stone to the next step is
sure
county
is.
jail and then the state prison.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, and that's exactly where they end up.
Wow. Wow. Now, what happens next? I mean, does that come up in the next state budget, or? I mean, if people are interested in this, how would they involve those?
Well, it should, and it's an active legislation, and it's up to the the police have to work together. The law enforcement has to work together. The community has to work together. These group homes, including the Webster House, we all have to come together and talk to the legislators and tell them how important it is to make sure that these children are serviced properly and getting the proper counseling. It's a shame, because when you look, and again, I'm not a politician. I don't try to be a politician. I'm a cop, and but it's a shame that when the legislature gave back the tobacco tax, we've lost so much money in this state. Is smoking cigarettes more important than taking care of our kids? I don't think so. So we've lost a lot of revenue because of the tobacco tax, and these store owners that supposedly were going to lower their costs so they can get people from out of state to come in and buy cigarettes and then buy other articles, they didn't do it. They kept the prices the same. So that didn't work.
Okay. So it's really not a case that anybody's taxes would have to be increased from what they are right now.
It shouldn't.
To keep the CHINS
it shouldn't be.
going.
But the dilemma that the state's in, when you get all these politicians that take the pledge, once they cut that tax for the cigarettes, it's going to be difficult to get it back, because they've taken that pledge of no taxes.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Because once anybody gets a reduction, they certainly will fight.
It's going to be hard to get that back.
Again. Yeah. Right. The mindset's there. Yeah, I hear you. I know that another thing we talked about, at some length during that first interview, were senior citizens, because obviously they can be so much more vulnerable to not only dangerous situations, but to being victimized by society's predators, for lack of a better description. What, as sheriff, could you do to address this? And what do you think our seniors really need to know that maybe they're not hearing enough about right now?
What our seniors need to know is they need to be educated. They need to be educated of the scams that are out there, the people that are trying to steal their life savings, and they come up with new plans daily. And it's up to law enforcement to, it's not just law enforcement, but it's the whole community working together. You know, look out for your neighbors. If you see something that you think is out of place, call the police. For law enforcement, we need to visit the senior centers. We need to visit the high-rises. We need to educate the seniors of the dangers that they face every day. There are so many scams that come up, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they're educated on what the scams are and what to be aware of.
Has there been much of an incidence in New Hampshire? Well, to your knowledge, I mean, I know you can't speak to the whole state, but has there been much of an incidence of this scam where, you know, grandma gets a call saying that, you know, her granddaughter got in all kinds of trouble and needs to be bailed out or whatever, and of course grandma's like, oh my God, you know, in response to it. Has there been a lot of that?
There has, and I know firsthand. I know this. A neighbor of mine had received a phone call, and what the caller said was, you know, we have your daughter. She's up in Montreal, Canada. She was arrested for drugs. She's very embarrassed by this. We need you to send money, and don't tell anyone else. And that's how they do it. You know, don't tell anyone else. She's really embarrassed, and they put the grandparents on notice that, hey, it's between you and your granddaughter, and they give them a fictitious address to send the money, and they fall for it. Wow. This lady, it was perfect because she knew that I was in law enforcement. She called me, and I told her, absolutely do not send any money. And I actually called the number back, and they hung up on me. So
really, wow. And what about the, you know, this actually happened to my mother once. She called me at work, kind of all upset, telling me that this contractor had knocked on her door, and said she lived on a hill, about midway down the hill, and that the contractor had knocked on her door because he was working on a house, on a roof at the top of the hill, and could see right down to her roof and could see this terrible damage that he felt, my gosh, I really need to let that poor lady know with winter coming, and knocked on her door telling her all about this terrible damage, and, you know, while he was in the neighborhood he could fit her in. And you know what? She almost fell for it. Almost. Because by then my dad was gone, so, you know, she was dealing with house issues that she wasn't familiar with, and all she could think of is what a nice, kind young man he was to take the trouble to come down and knock at her door and tell her this. Yeah. So, you know, what other type of scams like that are going on?
That's, you know, that's a good one that you brought up. Roofing scams, paving scams, landscaping. You know, they'll say, hey, you know, this tree's rotting. You need to take this tree down. We'll do it for you. The roofing. I'll give you a quick story. I was working on the fugitive task force with the U.S. Marshals and some other agencies a few years back, and we had run into a person that was scamming people. He was from Maine, and we actually conned him into coming down. We posed as an elderly gentleman and had him come down to do some work, and he did. So we actually arrested him for bilking other neighbors out of a lot of money. And what they do is, for example, they'll go up on the roof and they'll take a hammer and it just keep pounding. But they're not doing anything, but it sounds like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the owner is in the house thinking, oh, wow, they're working. They're not. You know, they're not even putting a nail in. And then next thing you know, the $400 estimate is $4,000 now. Wow. Yeah, and that's what they run into. Same thing with paving scams. They'll be doing some work, or they'll say they're doing some work on the street. They have extra asphalt, and they said, you know, they'll tell them that, hey, you know, we can take care of your driveway. It needs some work right now, and we'll do some patch work. And next thing you know, it's $1,000, where it should only be at the most $100. You know. So
for folks who would be listening to the show right now, who would fit into any of those categories, what should they do when somebody knocks on their door or, you know, whatever, giving them that kind of story? What should they do to, like, find out if these people are legitimate or the situation is actually true.
What they should do right away is tell them that, especially if you're dealing with an elderly female, is tell them that your husband's out in the back working, and could you drop off a business card and I'll get in touch with you. I'll think about it and I'll let you know, and see if they are legitimate. They'll give you their business card and they'll wait for your phone call. If they're not, they're just going to move on. And also, try to get as much information as you can. Their description, the description of the vehicle that they're in. If you can get a license plate, great. Don't go out of your way to do anything like that. You don't want to get hurt. Never ever allow anyone in your home. And a lot of times, and a lot of times what they'll do is they'll come in pairs, and this is another scam, is what they'll do is they'll have one person talking to the owner, and while he or she is occupied, the other person goes around the back, slips into the house, and starts rummaging through their property and steals things. It happens a lot more than people think. So you've got to be so aware. Call the police. If when in doubt, call the police. I'm involved with the Neighborhood Watch Group in Auburn, and we always tell them. I said, we don't care if we get 100 calls a day for suspicious vehicles and suspicious people. We'll go and check it out, and all it takes is that one person to get caught. And I'll tell you, the rates of burglaries have gone down drastically in Auburn since we started the Neighborhood Watch. It works when the community and law enforcement work together. It works. We can't do it alone. It's impossible to do alone. We need to continue working together.
And of course, another part of that too is if somebody approached me, telling me that our house needed, this very expensive work or whatever, and sounded convincing enough, well, it would be in my head, maybe this is something we need to look at. But I could tell you this, I'd want to go get a couple of prices from a couple of people and see who would do what for me at the best price. So, people should be practical on that score, and that'd be another way of protecting themselves.
And also make sure you oversee what they're doing to make sure that they're actually doing the work that they promised you.
Yeah, good point. Because if they're up on a roof or supposedly under the house working on pipes or septic or whatever,
But and just like you said, especially for a roof, you could call someone and say, if he's telling you what type of damage is up on a roof, get another estimate. Have someone have another roofer come in. This guy, if he's legit, he'll give you a business card and he'll accept that that you're going to get another estimate. And if he's not legitimate, you won't find him.
Another thought too is if somebody's kind of leery about calling contractors, because then you have all kinds of people floating around. If you had so-called damage, you could always call your insurance company. And say, gee, I seem to have damage, would I be covered? And they'll send out an adjuster. And if the adjuster sees absolutely no damage, they will be very quick to say so.
But these are all great scenarios that seniors should be aware of, and that's why we really need a sheriff that's going to focus and be committed to our senior citizens. We need someone that's going to be in office, that's going to assign someone, and I'll assign someone immediately to. It's not going to be a full-time position. It's going to be going to visit with them maybe on a Friday or one day during the week, and jump around from community to community and partner up with the other law enforcement agencies, because I know Manchester and Nashua, Merrimack has a senior, a person that takes care of senior citizen issues, and it's great. It's great cooperation between agencies to do that. For the past 5 years, we haven't done that. We need to get back, and we need to protect these seniors. I'm not going to turn my back on them.
All right, I'm going to shift over to something, because one of the big duties of a county sheriff is to identify the training needs for every level of employee within what's a large department. And particularly to provide appropriate training to keep your frontline people safe. So do you have some thoughts on this? Are there some needs now that you feel need to be better addressed?
Well, the training in any law enforcement agency is so important, and specifically for the sheriff's office. We have three major functions. One is civil, serving civil process. The other one is transporting prisoners, and the other one is going out and working on warrants out of the superior and district courts. Well, I'll start with the civil division. it's the days of going and being a glorified mailman are over. We're not mailmen. We're not just going over and dropping off a paper and moving on to the next address. There are a lot of sensitive paperwork. You're dealing with people with whether it be divorce issues, landlord and tenant disputes, temporary restraining orders, child custody orders. These are all very, very sensitive issues, and
highly emotional sometimes too.
they are, and for the safety of the men and women that work in the sheriff's office, they need to be trained properly, not only for their safety, but for the safety of the public.
Sure.
Because when you're going out, and I was trained properly. When Walter Morse was sheriff, he was a stickler for training, and we had training monthly. We were in different training classes inside our own agency, and it's so important to, and I will make sure that the men and women are trained, because God forbid if you're going out to serve for example, a temporary restraining order on a resident in the county. Number one, you need two people. The other thing that's really important, what I've always been trained, is you read through that paperwork. You read to see what the plaintiff wrote, because a lot of the restraining orders you're getting are handwritten. There's a page that's handwritten by the plaintiff saying why she wants the judge to sign this order. The judge will sign the order with some stipulations, and some of them will be boxes that are checked off. In other words, some of them could be that the defendant has to leave the premises, the defendant has to relinquish any firearms, the defendant has to stay 100 yards away from the plaintiff, that the defendant can't contact the plaintiff even through a third party. This all things like that. And I was trained that when you read through that, if you have absolutely any questions about the order, if you don't think it's strong enough, you go back and you talk to the judge. And I've done that on quite a few occasions. And it's so important that these people are trained, because these are very, very important papers to be served. And it's our responsibility to make sure that our employees are safe and the public is safe, and I will make sure that these people are trained properly.
Okay. Obviously, a big part of the county sheriff's job is budgeting and presenting budgets, particularly during tough economic times when you're trying to protect budgets and never mind trying to get an increase. Have you had the opportunity to really analyze the budget, and if so, were there budget shifts? I mean, going on the assumption you're probably not going to get more money, at least in the immediate future, are there budget shifts that you would make now that you feel would make things more efficient? Or?
Well, it's a very small budget. It's right approximately $3 million, and then we also have take care of the courts with court offices, but we're reimbursed from the state for that, so that's not really out of the county budget. Initially it may be, but then we get reimbursed from the state. The biggest thing is especially in law enforcement, is safety. Your first and foremost is to make sure that you have enough money in there that's appropriated, that is going to make your men and women safe, and again, the public safe. I know it's tough economic times, but you also need to fight. If you think something, if you don't think that you have enough personnel to do the job, you need to step up to the plate and challenge the legislators or the county commissioners as to why you think that the cuts are too deep. The other thing is partnering with other law enforcement agencies. We're not going to do it all, but if we go out and we work together with, for example, Nashville Police, Manchester Police, and the towns, if we work together, we can get the job done no matter what the cuts are. All right, and it's really important, again, to partner up with these agencies. And one of the biggest burdens that the sheriff's office has, and this actually is the transport division. It's burdensome. We have a lot of transports daily, and the sheriff has had 10 years to come up with a solution to this problem. He hasn't done it. My solution would be to implement a video arraignment. We're not recreating the wheel. Other counties have it. We should have it. We have the largest population in the county. We have 2 superior courts. We have district courts that these people go to. Yeah. It's not new. Yeah. It's not new. But he's had 10 years to do this. This would save the county money. We'd be able to to relocate some of our personnel into the warrants division, which make more arrests and get the bad guys off the street. It's going to take the cooperation of the county commissioners, the delegation, the court system, the judges, and also the personnel at the superintendent over at the jail. The sheriff has to lead. The sheriff should be doing this. It's going to save money. It's a safety issue, because now we don't have to take those prisoners from the jails. They can actually be in the jail, set up a room. We can assign 2 court officers. The court officers are pretty cheap. You know, you're talking $80, $85 a day. We could, Monday through Friday, we could assign 2 court officers there. That would relieve the burden on the correctional officer over at the jail.
So you've obviously thought this out, and we are running out of time. So what I'd like to do is literally, you're going to have a little over, well, just about 2 minutes to look at the camera and tell people why you have chosen to run for office this year, and more importantly, to your point in your campaign, why they need to put the dot, fill in that little dot beside your name when they go to the ballot.
Okay. I decided to run for sheriff because I care. I care about children. I care about seniors. I care about the employees over at the sheriff's office. I've had the opportunity to speak with the employees recently, and their biggest concern and their biggest complaint is that they have an absentee sheriff, and they also have limited training opportunities. Their safety is on the line. The safety of them and the safety of the residents in the community are on the line. I've also had the opportunity to visit with police chiefs throughout the county. They also have been complaining about the lack of cooperation between the sheriff and the towns. They are running on one person at nighttime. They need the assistance from the sheriff's office to help them out with transports. We haven't been doing that. They've been complaining about it. They've gotten 2 different answers. One of them was that he didn't have the funding. The other answer was that he's not mandated to do it. You don't have to be mandated to do something that's going to benefit the citizens in Hillsborough County. These are the people that elected you. These are the people that deserve a sheriff that is going to be committed to making sure that their towns are safe.
Good job.
Thank you.
So people, you're asking them to vote for you.
Yes.
That's what it's about. Well, listen, I am glad we had you over, because I know that among your many, many duties is you have a young daughter who's quite the little golfer, and it's a beautiful day, and maybe you're going to try to see her on the course out there. But I do want to thank you. I definitely want to wish you the best of luck in the final election.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
One way or another, I'm sure we'll see each other again. And I definitely would like you to keep us informed on some of these important topics that people do need to know about. And I think a few people probably learned a few ways to protect themselves just through the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you for being here.
Thanks.
All right. Now, Bill Barry does have a website, and it is www.billbarryforsheriff.com, and we will have that on the screen, so don't frantically run for a pencil. I hope you're enjoying the series, because as you can see, we're meeting some fabulous candidates, and each and every one of them so far, including my friend Bill here, is telling it like it is, and that's the name of the show, Tell It Like It Is. So hopefully you will too. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.